Hi, my name is Caroline McGee, and this is my CAA number 1. Question that I identified as needing extensive cultural background knowledge as well as challenging emergent bilinguals or English learners linguistically was number 27 from the 5th grade Math Star test. In this question, it says Spencer needs to balance his April budget. Under the income column, you can see that it lists allowance and his after school job. And then under the expenses column, it says cell phone, piano lessons, entertainment, and savings. I'm going to dive a little bit further into why this question is a bit problematic, especially for English learners. So this question makes several assumptions regarding cultural background and or knowledge. The first being socioeconomic implications. This question assumes that students have the cultural background of being in a family or an environment where the financial liberty of giving a student an allowance is present. While this may be true for some families, it is certainly not true for all. Additionally, the expenses portion of the question lists things like piano practice and cell phone and entertainment. And in many families across the state, these luxuries simply cannot be afforded. So, socioeconomically speaking, this is not relevant to the average child's culture, and it can definitely harm the student's understanding of the question. Furthermore, this question heavily relies on the student's understanding of English as a whole, and that leads me into the linguistic implications. These words like entertainment and piano practice and cell phone, they're all very ambiguous. And the average student, especially an English language learner, is not going to be able to tack down exactly what those expenditures are and what they mean. They may have no idea what piano practice is. And that sort of misunderstanding could certainly hurt their understanding of the problem. So this flaw in assessment is what is called bias. In chapter 6 of the Wright book, the author says that bias is the qualities of a testing instrument, and these qualities harm the validity of the assessment by penalizing a group of testers because of their gender, socioeconomic status, race, or really any other marginalizing attribute. In this assessment question, the socioeconomic and linguistic status of the student could be incredibly hinder their understanding of the question as a whole, and that might have nothing to do with their ability to computationally answer the question. So what might be difficult about this question linguistically for English learners? English learners may have a very hard time being able to dissect this question due to its extremely heavily reliance on high academic content vocabulary words, like the words balance and income and expenses and budget. These are words that not even a native speaking fifth grader would use in their everyday vocabulary, let alone in English learners. So on page 230 of our book, Making Content Comprehensible for English Learners, the author mentions that most learners need over 40 to 160 isolated exposures to a word before they can meaningfully internalize it. This is a staggering number, especially when you think about how many of these words are embedded in this question. So I did the math myself, and this means that an English learner would need to be exposed to these words a combined total of 160 to 640 times. This, in and of itself, lends itself to an extremely complex question beyond just the computational aspect of it, which is this is a math STAR test. So the ultimate goal is making sure that the English learner can do the math. Um, the words, the heavy reliance on these words completely hinder the child's ability to answer the question, even if they know how to do the math. Additionally, the words like increase and decrease and allowance may cause struggle because those words are not only complex in nature for even a native speaker, but they're also probably unfamiliar to the English learner. Um, Again, they would just need a vast exposure to all of these words in order to be able to digest this question in its entirety. So I went ahead and revised this question as is to make it much more culturally relevant for all students and to avoid that linguistic ambiguity that I previously mentioned. So under the income portion where it originally said allowance, I changed that to morning job. I changed it to morning job because I think it just flows better having morning job after school job. And additionally, jobs are relevant to every student's life, whether their parents have a job, their siblings have a job, they go to a school where their teacher has a job, and they go to the grocery store where that grocery store clerk has a job. It just makes more sense and it's much more relevant and it eliminates that ambiguity of what is an allowance because, I've never heard of it and my friend doesn't have one and so on and so forth. So, as far as expenses go, I moved away from the more privilege esque side of things and I went fully needs based. So, in social studies, I'm in third grade, this is fifth grade. We are constantly teaching financial literacy, and that encompasses wants versus needs. So, at this point, all students are aware that our needs are shelter, clothing, and food. So, I decided to put those in instead of the more like privilege side. And I chose to go with the word house because I believe that is much more linguistically friendly to our English learners. Shelter is kind of a more advanced term for housing, and housing is just straightforward. I also adjusted the answer choices to reflect the new expenses. And I strategically placed clothing in answer D because that's the correct answer to this question, which would be decrease his, it was originally entertainment, cost by $10. And I chose to put clothing there because it just makes the most sense that that would be the part of the budget to that would have to give. So there are tons of ways to prepare students for standardized questions, and in placement, we use release star questions as exit tickets all the time. We also use release star questions as hooks and or warm-ups in all content areas. Additionally, I'm in a district that is subscribing to Amplify, which is a pretty rigid curriculum. However, we have found ways to reword the questions using star stems, and that has proven to be extremely effective. Additionally, we use softwares that kind of mimic the star software, which is Cambium, and that also helps students because they will know how to navigate the website when that time comes. And these are my references. I hope you enjoyed.